Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the star maps with growing concern. The red zones kept expanding across the display. Each red dot meant another world lost to the Zarathi swarm. The insect-like aliens had already consumed 12 star systems in just 6 months. Admiral, incoming transmission from Council Command, her communications officer announced. Chen straightened her uniform. The Galactic Council rarely contacted human forces directly. For 150 years, humanity had served as junior members of the galactic community. They followed orders, paid tributes, and hoped to earn respect from the 12 ancient species that ruled the galaxy. The hologram flickered to life. Chancellor Vexhai appeared, his reptilian features cold as always. Behind him stood the other council members, beings whose civilizations had existed for thousands of years before humans even discovered fire. Admiral Chen, Vexhai spoke in his measured tone, the Council has decided to grant humanity a great honor. Your species has proven itself worthy of a crucial mission. Chen felt her stomach tighten. Something in the Chancellor's voice seemed wrong, too formal, too careful. What kind of mission, Chancellor? The Zarathi homeworld has been located. Our intelligence shows their entire command structure operates from there. A surgical strike could end this war in one decisive blow. Vexhai paused. We are assigning this mission to the human fleet, all of it. Chen's blood went cold. The entire human fleet? That meant every ship, every crew member, every life humanity could spare would be thrown at the most dangerous target in the galaxy. Chancellor, with respect, shouldn't this be a joint operation? Combined forces would have a better chance of success. The other council members exchanged glances. A blue-skinned Altarian stepped forward. Admiral, your species has always shown remarkable courage. This mission requires that courage above all else. The honor is yours alone, added a crystalline Vorthon. Humanity will be remembered throughout galactic history. Remembered. Past tense. Chen noticed that immediately. When do we deploy? She asked, keeping her voice steady. Immediately. Your orders are being transmitted now. May fortune favor your sacrifice. Vexhai cut the transmission before Chen could respond. Chen stared at the empty hologram projector. Sacrifice, not mission, not operation. Sacrifice. Ma'am? Her first officer, Commander Rodriguez, approached cautiously. The orders just came through. We're to gather the entire fleet at Jump Point 7 and proceed directly to the Zarathi homeworld. No support, no backup, no extraction plan. Chen read the orders herself. They were suicide orders dressed up as strategy. Send humanity's entire military force against an enemy homeworld protected by millions of ships and billions of soldiers. Even if they succeeded, none of them would survive the journey home. Get me Director Webb on Earth. Encrypted channel. Minutes later, Webb's worried face appeared on her private screen. Marcus Webb ran Earth's intelligence services, and he had always been suspicious of the Council's true intentions. Sarah, what's happening out there? We're getting reports of massive fleet movements. Marcus, I need you to listen carefully. The Council just gave us orders to attack the Zarathi homeworld with our entire fleet. No support, no backup. Chen's voice dropped to a whisper. They're sending us to die. Webb's face went pale. Are you certain? I've been fighting aliens for 20 years, Marcus. I know the difference between a mission and an execution. What are you going to do? Chen looked around her bridge at the young faces of her crew. Good people, brave people, people who trusted their leaders to make smart decisions. I'm going to follow orders. But first, I'm going to make sure everyone knows what's really happening. 3 days later, the human fleet assembled at Jump Point 7. 200 ships, 50,000 crew members. The pride of humanity's military forces. Chen broadcast to every ship in the fleet. She explained the mission. She explained the odds. She explained what the Council really expected to happen. We are being sent to die, so the Council can buy time. To evacuate their important worlds, she told them. They have decided that human lives are worth less than their convenience. The response surprised her. Not anger. Not fear. Determination. Captain Harrison spoke for his crew. Ma'am, we knew this day might come. We've always known the Council saw us as expendable. At least now we die with our eyes open. Commander Park from the Destroyer Squadron added, "If we're going to die anyway, let's make it count. Let's take as many of those bugs with us as possible." The fleet jumped toward the Zarathi homeworld. The journey took 4 days. 4 days for Chen to prepare her final message to Earth. The Zarathi were waiting for them. Millions of ships surrounded their homeworld like a metal storm cloud. The human fleet looked tiny in comparison. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen. We go in fast and hit them hard. Target their command ships first. Make every shot count." The battle was chaos. Human ships dove into the swarm like arrows shot into a hurricane. They fought with desperate courage, taking impossible risks and achieving impossible victories. The Zarathi had never faced enemies who fought like cornered animals, but courage wasn't enough. The numbers were too great. One by one, human ships fell. The Defiance exploded while ramming a Zarathi dreadnought. The Unity used its last missiles to destroy an enemy command center before being torn apart by plasma fire. Chen's flagship was dying. Half her bridge crew was dead. Emergency lights flashed red in the smoke-filled command center. "Admiral, we've lost main power. Life support failing," Rodriguez reported. Blood ran down his face from a head wound. "How many ships do we have left?" 12, ma'am. Maybe less." Chen activated the fleet-wide broadcast one last time. Her message would reach Earth in 6 hours. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Fleet. We were betrayed by those we trusted. The Council sent us here to die, not to win. They used us as a distraction while they prepared their own defenses." Her voice stayed calm even as explosions rocked the ship. "We were never their allies. We were their expendable tools." She paused, as another blast shook the bridge. "To everyone listening on Earth, remember this day. Remember what they did to us. We died believing in honor and duty. Don't let our children make the same mistake." The transmission cut out as Chen's flagship broke apart. The few surviving human ships scattered into deep space, officially listed as missing in action. On Earth, Director Webb received Chen's final message. He sat in his office, watching the recording again and again. 50,000 people, dead, murdered by the very beings humanity had tried so hard to please. Webb opened his secure files and began typing. The first line read, "Protocol Lazarus authorization required." He had named it after the man who rose from the dead, because sometimes, Webb thought, the dead don't stay dead. Sometimes they come back angry. The Council announced humanity's heroic sacrifice throughout the galaxy. They built monuments and gave speeches about human courage. They never mentioned that they had planned for humanity to die from the very beginning. But Webb knew the truth, and soon he would make sure everyone else knew it too. The war with the Zarathi continued. The Council's forces slowly retreated, buying time with other species' lives. They thought the human problem was solved forever. They were wrong. Director Marcus Webb sat in his underground office 6 months after the battle. Above him, Earth mourned its heroes. Memorial services played on every channel. Politicians gave speeches about humanity's noble sacrifice. Parents wept for children who died serving the greater galactic good. Webb knew better. He had spent every day since Chen's final transmission digging for the truth. His intelligence network stretched across a dozen worlds, and what they found made his blood burn with rage. "Sir, we have the final piece." His assistant, Agent Torres, placed a data pad on his desk. "The Council archives from Vex High's private server." Webb activated the pad and began reading. The first document was a betting pool. Council members had wagered on how long human forces would last against the Zarathi. The highest bet was 3 hours. The lowest was 45 minutes. The next document was worse. It was a territorial division agreement, signed 2 weeks before the battle. The Council had already divided up human colonies among themselves. Earth would go to the Altarians. The mining worlds would belong to the Vorthons. Human research stations would be gifts for the smaller Council species. "They planned our extinction before we even received the mission," Webb whispered. Torres nodded grimly. "It gets worse, sir. Look at File 7. Webb opened the file and felt sick. It was a biological survey of human worlds. The report discussed the protein potential of human populations, and the agricultural value of human-settled planets. They had been planning to harvest humanity like livestock. "How many people know about this?" Webb asked. "Just our core team. 20 agents across. 5 worlds." Webb leaned back in his chair. 20 people knew that humanity had been murdered for convenience. 20 people knew that the tiers and memorials above were based on a lie. "Find out if this happened before," Webb ordered. "Check the historical records. Look for other species that made heroic sacrifices for the Council." Torres nodded and left. Webb turned to his wall screen, showing the main memorial ceremony in New Geneva. General Harrison Blake stood at the podium, reading the names of the dead. Behind him, families clutched photos of their lost loved ones. Webb's secure communicator beeped, an encrypted message from deep space. Only 3 people had this channel, and 2 of them were supposed to be dead. He opened the message and nearly fell from his chair. It was from Admiral Chen. "Marcus, I'm alive. 17 ships escaped. We've been hiding in the Void Nebula, making repairs and gathering intelligence. Don't respond to this message. Don't tell anyone. The Council thinks we're all dead. Let them. Keep thinking that. We have work to do. Chen out." Webb stared at the message until it auto-deleted. Sarah was alive. Some of the fleet had survived. They were out there, somewhere in the dark between stars, planning something. 3 days later, Torres returned with historical records that made Webb's hands shake with anger. "Sir, we found evidence of 16 other species that made heroic last stands over the past 2,000 years. The pattern is always the same. Young species show promise. Council accepts them as junior members. Crisis develops. Young species gets assigned to impossible mission. Young species dies heroically. Council takes their territory." Webb scrolled through the files. The Kethai had died fighting the Crystal Plague 800 years ago. Their ocean worlds now belonged to the Altarians. The Zephyrians had made their last stand against the Machine Rebellion 300 years ago. The Vorthons now mined their asteroid colonies. Every species that the Council had called promising young allies was extinct. Every species that had died for the greater galactic good had been murdered by those they trusted. "How many species in total?" Webb asked. 27 confirmed extinctions over 2 millennia. All junior Council members. All died in convenient ways that solved Council problems and freed up valuable territory. Webb felt something cold settle in his chest. Not just anger, something deeper. Something that would drive him for the rest of his life. What about surviving junior species? Are there others who lived through their heroic missions? Torres consulted his files. 14 species currently hold junior member status. All of them have lost significant populations in Council-assigned suicide missions over the past century. The Drexians lost half their fleet stopping a pirate uprising. The Moltar sacrificed 3 colony worlds to contain a viral outbreak. The pattern repeats. Webb stood and walked to his wall map of the galaxy. Red pins marked extinct species. Yellow pins marked surviving junior members. Blue pins showed Council core worlds, fat and safe behind walls of other species' corpses. "Sir, what are your orders?" Webb turned back to Torres. The young agent looked eager and angry the way Webb felt inside. "We're going to tell them the truth, all of them. Every surviving species, every family that lost someone in a Council mission, everyone who believes their loved ones died for honor and duty. That will cause chaos, sir. Revolts. Maybe civil wars." "Good," Webb said coldly. "The Council has been feeding on the galaxy for 2,000 years. Time to give them indigestion." Webb activated his secure network. 47 intelligence agents across 21 worlds received the same message. "Begin Protocol Lazarus. Distribute all files. Full disclosure authorized." Within hours, the truth began spreading. Human families learned that their heroes had been murdered. Alien species discovered that their ancestors had died for Council profit. Junior member governments found evidence that they were next on the extinction list. The carefully controlled galactic information networks erupted. Council sensors tried to block the transmissions, but Webb's agents were too smart and too prepared. The truth spread like wildfire across the galaxy. On Earth, General Blake received a priority message while giving another memorial speech. He read it on stage, his face going white with shock and rage. "Ladies and gentlemen," Blake's voice cut through the crowd. "I have just received information that changes everything we thought we knew about our hero's sacrifice." He read Webb's summary, aloud. The crowd grew silent, then began to murmur, then erupted in shouts of rage. Parents who had buried their children in honor now learned those children had been murdered by alien politicians. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. The Drexian Parliament called an emergency session. The Moltar Colonial Council declared independence from Council authority. 3 junior species announced they were withdrawing from all Council treaties. In his office, Webb watched the chaos begin and felt satisfied. But this was just the beginning. The Council would try to restore order. They would make promises and offer compromises. They would do everything except admit guilt or face justice. That was fine. Webb had learned patience from watching the Council operate. They played games that lasted centuries, moving pieces slowly across the galactic board. Webb could be patient too. But when he moved his pieces, the game would end. He opened a new file on his computer and began typing. Phase 2 operations. Long-term strategic planning. The Council had made one critical mistake. They had tried to exterminate humanity, but they had only made humanity angry. And as the galaxy was about to learn, an angry human with time to plan was the most dangerous thing in the universe. Above ground, Earth continued to mourn its dead. But below ground, Webb and his agents began, planning something that would make the Council regret ever hearing the word human. The war was just beginning. 1 year after the betrayal, Director Webb stood in a secret facility beneath the Rocky Mountains. Around him, the most brilliant minds of humanity worked on Project Lazarus. Engineers, scientists, strategists, and intelligence agents all focused on a single goal, preparing for war against an enemy that controlled most of the galaxy. "Status report," Webb said to Dr. Sarah Kim, the project's chief scientist. "We've reverse-engineered 70% of Council technology from the equipment they sold us over the years," Kim replied. "Their energy shields, they're faster than light, drives, their communication systems. We understand how they work now." "Better than understanding," added Chief Engineer Rodriguez. "We've improved them. Human manufacturing techniques can build their technology smaller, faster, and more efficient than they ever managed." Webb nodded. That was the first advantage humanity had discovered. The Council species were ancient and set in their ways. They had used the same technologies for thousands of years, making tiny improvements over centuries. Humans thought differently. They looked at alien technology and immediately began asking how to make it better. "What about the fleet?" Webb asked Admiral Morrison, who had replaced Chen as the ranking human military officer. "We have 200 ships under construction in hidden facilities throughout the system. The Memorial Fleet program has been perfect cover. Everyone thinks we're building monuments to our dead heroes. Instead, we're building warships." Webb smiled at that irony. The Council had encouraged Earth to build a memorial fleet to honor humanity's sacrifice. They thought it would help humans accept their loss and move on. They had no idea that each memorial ship was actually an advanced warship disguised as a peaceful monument. "The crews?" Webb asked. "Ready and training. Every family that lost someone in the Zarathi battle volunteered. Their children, their siblings, their parents. We have more volunteers than we have ships." That was humanity's second advantage. Other species fought wars with professional soldiers and conscripted troops. Humans were fighting for revenge, and that made them incredibly motivated. A parent seeking justice for a murdered child would fight 10 times harder than a soldier following orders. Agent Torres approached with a data pad. "Sir, we have reports from the other species. The truth about Council betrayals has spread to 47 worlds. 12 species have formally withdrawn from Council treaties. 5 have declared independence. Resistance movements, growing stronger. Every month, the Drexians have formed guerrilla cells on 6 worlds. The Moltar are conducting sabotage operations against Council supply lines. The Kasari have started intercepting Council communications and sharing intelligence with us." Webb felt satisfied. The galaxy was slowly awakening to the truth about their rulers. But anger alone wouldn't win this war. They needed strategy, patience, and perfect timing. "Torres, what's the status on infiltration operations?" "Better than expected, sir. Council guilt about humanity's sacrifice has opened doors we never could have accessed before." They've granted unlimited access to human memorial missions. Our agents are now operating on every major council world. Webb pulled up a star map on the main display. Red dots showed council military bases. Blue dots showed human agents. There were blue dots everywhere. They think we're dead, Webb explained to the gathered team. They think the human threat ended at the Zarathi homeworld. They've dropped their guard. Our memorial ships can go anywhere, scan anything, map everything. They're giving us complete intelligence about their military capabilities. Dr. Kim raised her hand. Sir, we've also been analyzing Zarathi technology from the battle recordings. Their bioengineering is remarkably advanced. We might be able to use it. For what? Biological warfare. Not against civilians, Kim added quickly, but the Zarathi developed targeted viruses that only affect specific genetic markers. We could modify them to target Council leadership species. Webb considered that. Biological weapons were terrible things, but the Council had committed genocide against humanity. Maybe it was time to fight terror with terror. Research it, but don't deploy anything yet. We want options, not war crimes. Morrison spoke up. Sir, we've also been in contact with Admiral Chen. Her survivors have been busy. Webb's eyes sharpened. What kind of busy? They've been following the Zarathi swarms, learning their tactics, identifying their weaknesses. But more importantly, they've been guiding the Zarathi toward specific Council worlds. Guiding them how? Subtle sabotage of Council defense networks. Anonymous intelligence tips about valuable targets. Disruption of evacuation orders. The Zarathi think they're winning through their own skill. Actually, Chen's people have been steering them like a weapon pointed at the Council. Webb felt a chill of admiration. Sarah Chen had always been brilliant, but this was masterful. She was using humanity's greatest enemy as a tool against humanity's betrayers. How many Council worlds have fallen to the Zarathi since our battle? 23 core worlds, plus over 100 colonies and outposts. The Council is retreating toward their home systems, abandoning the outer territories. Webb studied the battle reports. The pattern was clear. The Zarathi were systematically destroying Council infrastructure while leaving junior species largely alone. That wasn't coincidence. Chen was protecting humanity's potential allies while eliminating their enemies' resources. Casualties among junior species? Webb asked. Minimal. Most of the species we've been recruiting have actually gained territory as the Council retreats. The Drexians now control 3 systems that used to belong to the Altarians. The Moltar have expanded into former Vorthon mining colonies. Perfect. The chaos was working in humanity's favor. The Council was losing territory and resources while potential human allies grew stronger and more independent. Sir, Torres interrupted. We have a priority message from Agent Park on the Altarian homeworld. Webb activated the communication. Link. Agent Park's face appeared on screen, looking excited and worried at the same time. Director, I've intercepted Council military communications. They're planning something called Operation Final Unity. It's scheduled for next month. What kind of operation? A massive military strike against all rebel species simultaneously. They want to crush the independence movements before they grow stronger. The target list includes Earth. Webb felt his blood go cold. If the Council decided to eliminate all their problems at once, humanity wasn't ready for open warfare yet. How big a force? 2,000 ships, sir. The largest Council fleet ever assembled. They're calling it the Pacification Armada. Webb looked around the room at his team. 200 human ships against 2,000 Council vessels. Even with their improvements and better motivation, those were terrible odds. Morrison, how long until our fleet is ready? 6 months minimum, sir. We're not ready for a direct fight. Webb thought for a moment, then smiled coldly. Who said anything about a direct fight? Torres, send a message to Admiral Chen. Tell her it's time to come home. Sir? The Council wants to end this war quickly. They think they can intimidate us with overwhelming force, but they've forgotten something important about humans. What's that, sir? Webb looked at the star map, where 2,000 red dots were gathering near Earth. We're very good at turning other people's weapons against them. He turned to address the entire room. People, we have 6 weeks to prepare for the Council's arrival. I want every ship ready, every weapon charged, and every trap set. The Council is coming to Earth expecting to find frightened survivors begging for mercy. Webb's smile grew wider and more dangerous. Instead, they're going to find out why it's a bad idea to make humanity angry. 2 years after the betrayal, the galaxy burned with rebellion. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching as the Council's pacification armada approached Earth. 2,000 ships strong, it was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. The Council intended to end all resistance movements in one massive demonstration of power. They had no idea what was waiting for them. "Admiral, all human ships report ready," her communications officer announced. "The Memorial Fleet has shed their disguises and activated combat systems." Chen looked at her tactical display. 400 ships now surrounded Earth. Not the 200 Webb had built, but 400. The additional vessels had come from an unexpected source, the supposed victims of humanity's rebellion. Status report from Allied fleets: the Drexians have 60 ships in position behind Jupiter. The Moltar brought 40 vessels hiding in the asteroid belt. The Kasari squadron is standing by near Mars. Total Allied strength, 637 ships. Chen smiled grimly. The Council had expected to find a few hundred frightened rebels. Instead, they were flying into a trap that had been 2 years in the making. "Any word from the Zarathi front?" "The swarms are moving as planned, Admiral. They should reach the Council home systems just as the pacification armada realizes they can't go home." That had been the most delicate part of Chen's strategy. For 2 years, her deep space survivors had been secretly guiding the Zarathi toward Council core worlds while making it look like natural expansion. The bugs would arrive at the Council homeworlds just as their entire military was trapped fighting a war they couldn't win near Earth. Chancellor Vexhi's face appeared on the main screen, broadcasting to all ships in the system. His reptilian features showed the same cold arrogance that had condemned humanity 2 years ago. "Humans and rebel species of Earth system," Vexhi's voice echoed across the fleet. "Your resistance to lawful Council authority ends today. Surrender immediately, and your executions will be swift. Continue to resist, and we will make examples of your worlds that will terrify the galaxy for 1,000 years. Chen activated her own broadcast, sending her response to every ship in both fleets. "Chancellor Vexhi, 2 years ago, you sent humanity to die because you thought our lives were worthless. Today, you're here to finish the job because you think we're too weak to stop you. You were wrong then. You're wrong now." She paused, looking around her bridge at the faces of her crew. Men and women who had been presumed dead for 2 years. Officers whose families still believed they had died heroes. Soldiers who had spent every day since the betrayal planning for this moment. "People of the galaxy," Chen continued. "What you see today is not just a battle between the Council and humanity. It's a reckoning. For 2,000 years, the Council has fed on younger species like parasites. They promise partnership and deliver genocide. They offer honor and deliver betrayal. Today, that ends." Webb's voice came through on a private channel. "Sarah, the information bombs are ready. Should we deploy?" "Do it." Across the galaxy, every communication network suddenly carried the same signal. The complete historical records of Council genocides broadcast simultaneously to every world, every ship, every population center. The evidence was undeniable. Centuries of betrayal, thousands of extinct species, millions of lives sacrificed for Council convenience. On Council worlds, populations learned that their heroes had been murderers. On Allied worlds, species discovered they weren't alone in their suffering. On neutral worlds, governments realized they were dealing with monsters disguised as leaders. The effect was immediate and devastating. Half the Council fleet received emergency recalls from their home governments. Captains faced mutinous crews, who refused to fight for genocidal leaders. Some Council ships simply stopped fighting and waited to see what would happen next. But Chancellor Vexhi wasn't finished. His personal dreadnought, the Eternal Order, was the size of a small moon and carried enough firepower to destroy planets. "You dare to question the natural order?" Vexhi snarled across the communications link. "Your species exist at our sufferance. We created the civilization you enjoy. We maintained the peace you took for granted." Chen's response was cold and sharp. "You created nothing. You stole everything. The peace you maintained was built on graves you dug." The battle began with the Council's traditional overwhelming assault. Massive dreadnoughts fired planet-killing weapons at human defensive positions. They expected the rebels to break and run like every other species they had crushed over the centuries. Instead, the human ships moved like they were dancing. They flowed around the heavy weapons, struck at weak points, and disappeared before return fire could find them. Chen's people had learned from 2 years of fighting the Zarathi. They understood how to use speed and intelligence against superior numbers. But the real surprise came from the memorial ships themselves. When the Council weapons struck them, they didn't explode. They absorbed the energy and redirected it back at the attackers. Dr. Kim's reverse-engineered shield technology had been modified to store and reflect incoming fire. Impossible, Vex High whispered as his dreadnought's main cannon blast bounced off a human cruiser and struck his own support ships. Where did they get defensive technology that advanced? Chen activated an open channel so every ship in both fleets could hear her answer. We stole it from you, Vex High. Every piece of technology you ever sold us, every system you ever showed us, every weapon you ever demonstrated. We learned it all, and we made it better. The Council Admiral commanding the Pacification Armada tried to rally his forces, but the psychological damage was spreading. Council crews were watching their enemies use superior versions of their own technology against them. Ships that should have been helpless were dancing through their formations and striking with impossible precision. Then the Allied fleets revealed themselves. Drexian ships emerged from behind Jupiter, moving in perfect coordination with human vessels. Moltar destroyers swarmed out of the asteroid belt like angry wasps. Kesari cruisers appeared from nowhere and began jamming Council communications. "This is Admiral Morrison," came a broadcast from Earth. "All Council forces, you have 10 minutes to surrender. After that, we stop playing games." Vex High's dreadnought fired its main weapon at Earth itself. The planet-killer beam should have cracked continents and boiled oceans. Instead, it struck an invisible barrier around the planet and scattered harmlessly into space. Chen had been waiting for this moment. "You want to see what we learned from your technology, Chancellor? Earth is protected by a shield grid powered by the planet's core itself. You couldn't break it if you had 10,000 ships." But Chen wasn't done. "Morrison, activate the trap. Space." Around the Council fleet suddenly filled with mines, thousands of them, appearing from stealth fields that had hidden them for months. But these weren't ordinary mines. They were modified Zarathi bioweapons, designed to target specific genetic markers. "Those mines are set to detonate if any Council ship tries to jump away," Chen announced. "The bioweapon inside them is engineered to target only Council leadership species. Surrender now, or find out if your environmental suits can protect you from something designed to kill you at the genetic level." Half the Council fleet powered down their weapons immediately. The other half tried to fight their way out, and discovered that human trap-making was even more advanced than their shield technology. Chancellor Vex High found his mighty dreadnought surrounded by ships he had tried to exterminate 2 years ago. His pacification armada was surrendering or fleeing. His home worlds were under attack by the Zarathi, exactly as Chen had planned. "This is impossible," he repeated. "You're primitives. You're children. You should be grateful we allowed you to exist at all." Chen's final response echoed across the galaxy. "We were children, Vex High. You taught us to be monsters. Congratulations. Class is in session." The Battle of Earth was over in 6 hours. The largest military force in galactic history had been defeated by species they considered barely civilized. But Chen knew this was just the beginning. The Council still had reserves. They still controlled core worlds and key resources. The war would continue for months or even years. But now the galaxy knew the truth. Now every species understood that the Council could be beaten. Most importantly, now everyone knew that humanity wasn't dead. They were very much alive, and they were very angry. 3 years after the betrayal, Admiral Sarah Chen walked through the ruins of the Council chambers on Vextai Prime. The massive building that had once housed the most powerful government in the galaxy was now a shattered shell. Broken statues of Council founders lay scattered across marble floors. Windows that had once shown the stars now showed only twisted metal and empty space. The war was ending, not with a final battle, but with exhaustion. The Council had lost too many fleets, too much territory, and too many allies to continue fighting. Their homeworlds were under siege by both the Zarathi swarms and rebel coalitions. Their junior species had abandoned them. Even their own populations were demanding an end to the killing. Chen found Chancellor Vexhai in what used to be his private office. The proud reptilian leader who had condemned humanity to death now sat behind a broken desk, wearing a simple prisoner's uniform instead of his ceremonial robes. His scales were dull, his eyes defeated. "Admiral Chen," Vexhai said without looking up. "I wondered when you would come." "I wanted to see you before the tribunal," Chen replied. She remained standing, looking down at the being who had tried to exterminate her species. The tribunal. Vexhai laughed bitterly. "A trial conducted by primitives and children. How fitting." Chen pulled up a chair and sat across from him. "You still don't understand, do you? You still think this is about primitive species overthrowing their betters, isn't it?" "No, Vexhai. This is about justice, something your council never learned." Vexhai finally looked at her. His reptilian features showed confusion and a trace of genuine curiosity. "Justice? We maintained order for thousands of years. We prevented wars. We created prosperity. You created prosperity for yourselves by stealing from everyone else. You prevented wars by murdering anyone strong enough to fight you. You maintained order by making everyone else too terrified to resist." Chen leaned forward. "But you made one mistake, Vexhai. You tried to kill us quietly, and we survived loudly." Behind her, the office door opened. Director Webb entered, followed by representatives from dozen species, Drexians, Moltar, Kasari, and others. All species that had lost people to council missions over the centuries. "The tribunal is ready," Webb announced. "Every species you tried to exterminate will have their say." Vexhai stood slowly, his chains rattling. "And then, execution, torture. Will you become the monsters you claim we were?" Chen stood as well. "That's the difference between us, Chancellor. We're not going to kill you. We're going to let you live." Vexhai's eyes widened, in surprise. "Live? Live with the knowledge of what you did. Live with the consequences of your choices. Live to see the galaxy heal from the damage you caused." They walked through the ruined corridors toward the tribunal chamber. Along the way, Vexhai saw the truth of humanity's victory. Council soldiers worked alongside human engineers to repair damaged infrastructure. Former enemies shared meals and stories. Children of different species played together in areas that had once been restricted by council racial codes. "How?" Vexhai whispered. "How did primitives accomplish what we could not?" Webb answered without looking back. "We listened to each other instead of talking down to each other. We built alliances instead of demanding submission. We chose cooperation over conquest. The tribunal chamber was packed with representatives from every corner of the galaxy. Not just government officials, but ordinary citizens whose families had died in council missions. Farmers whose worlds had been strip-mined. Workers whose children had been taken as tribute. People whose voices the council had never bothered to hear. Chen took her place at the witness stand first. She spoke calmly and clearly about the Zarathi mission, about Admiral Chen's final message, about the evidence of deliberate genocide. She presented facts without emotion, letting the truth speak for itself. Then came the other witnesses. A Drexian mother whose 3 sons had died stopping a pirate uprising that turned out to be a council mining operation. A Moltar scientist who had been forced to develop biological weapons for council use. A Kasari pilot who had been ordered to bomb her own people to prevent the spread of dangerous ideas. For 12 hours, the galaxy listened to stories of council betrayal, manipulation, and murder. Vexhai sat through it all, his expression growing more and more haunted as he heard the full scope of what his government had done. Finally, it was time for judgment. The chief tribunal judge, an elderly human woman named Dr. Martinez, stood to address the chamber. "Chancellor Vexhai, you stand accused of genocide, war crimes, and crimes against sapient life. How do you answer?" Vexhai was quiet for a long moment. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, "Guilty." The chamber erupted in surprised murmurs. No one had expected him to confess. "You admit to planning the systematic extinction of multiple species?" Dr. Martinez asked. "Yes." You admit to using those species as expendable tools in false missions? Yes. You admit to treating entire civilizations as resources to be consumed rather than peoples to be respected? Vexhai closed his eyes. Yes, to all of it. We told ourselves it was necessary. We told ourselves it was for the greater good. We told ourselves that primitive species didn't really count as people. He opened his eyes and looked directly at Chen. We were wrong. Dr. Martinez nodded gravely. The tribunal finds the defendant guilty on all charges. The sentence is life imprisonment, with the possibility of redemption through service. Service? Vexhai looked confused. Webb stepped forward. You're going to help us fix what you broke? Chancellor, you know where all the hidden council resources are located. You know which species were targeted for future elimination. You know the locations of secret prisons and forced labor camps. You're going to help us find them all. And if I refuse? Chen answered. Then you sit in a cell for the rest of your life, knowing that people are suffering in places you could help us find. Your choice. Vexhai stared at them in amazement. You're giving me a chance to atone. That's what justice means, Chen replied. Not revenge, not punishment for its own sake. The chance to make things right. 6 months later, Vexhai sat in a different office on a human ship. The walls were covered with star charts showing the locations of former council black sites and hidden facilities. Each red mark represented a place where prisoners had been freed or resources redistributed to species that needed them. He was no longer chancellor. He was no longer a leader. He was a middle-aged alien wearing a work uniform, doing data entry and file organization under human supervision. It was humble work, tedious work, the kind of work he had once considered beneath his station. But for the first time in his life, Vexhai felt like he was doing something worthwhile. Through his small window, he could see the construction of New Geneva Station, the headquarters of the newly formed Galactic Federation. Unlike the old council, this government had representatives from every species, including the smallest and newest. Decisions were made by consensus, not by the decree of ancient powers. Dr. Sarah Kim, now serving as the Federation's science director, stopped by his office with the daily reports. How are the agricultural assessments coming? She asked. Completed for sectors 7 through 12, Vexhai replied. The Moltar colonies should be self-sufficient within 2 years if we redirect the mining equipment from the abandoned Altarian facilities. Kim nodded approvingly. Good work. The Federation Council wants to review your recommendations tomorrow. After she left, Vexhai returned to his files. Outside his window, a group of human children played with young aliens from a dozen different species. Their laughter drifted through the walls, a sound that would have been impossible under council rule. Vexhai's personal communicator chimed. A message from Admiral Chen, now serving as Federation Defense Coordinator. Weekly report. 0 new conflicts. 12 former council conflicts resolved through negotiation. 3 species requesting Federation membership. The Zarathi have agreed to peace talks next month. Your intelligence reports have been invaluable. Well done. Vexhai stared at the message for a long time. Under council rule, there had been constant wars, rebellions, and crises. The galaxy had been held together by fear and force. Now, under human leadership, species were actually choosing to work together. He had spent his entire life believing that power meant the ability to destroy others. The humans had taught him that true power meant the ability to build something better. His door chimed. A young human technician entered with a cart full of data pads. More files from the Vorthan archives, sir. The Federation wants to review all historical territorial claims to make sure everyone gets back what was stolen from them. Vexhai accepted the files and began sorting them. Somewhere in these records were the deeds to worlds that had been taken from extinct species, worlds that could now be given to refugee populations or converted into memorial sites. It was slow work, careful work, important work, the kind of work that rebuilt civilizations instead of destroying them. As he worked, Vexhai reflected on Admiral Chen's final words at his trial. We were children, Vexhai. You taught us to be monsters, but we chose to remain human instead. He understood now what she had meant. The humans could have become conquerors like the Council. They had the power, the technology, and the justification. Instead, they had chosen to be healers.